So have you been out in public lately and just felt this, I don't know, this strange, heavy tension in the air?
Oh, absolutely. It is everywhere right now.
Right. Like, you know exactly the feeling I'm talking about. You're standing in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Maybe you're just holding a basket of completely mundane things, milk, bread, whatever.
Yeah, just trying to run a basic errand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you look around and you get this distinct, unsettling sensation that every single person in the aisles is exactly one bumped shopping cart away from completely losing their minds.
It's palpable. It really is.
It's not just that people seem rushed, which, we're always rushed.
hmm
Is that they seem fundamentally brittle, like they could snap at any second.
Well, it is a very specific modern atmosphere. Like the ambient temperature of the room might be 72 degrees, but the psychological temperature feels like it's resting at a rolling boil.
A rolling boil, yes.
Yeah.
That is the perfect way to put it.
Yeah, because people look deeply defensive before a single word is even spoken to them. They look exhausted in a way that, in a way that sleep just doesn't seem to fix.
Yeah, deep structural exhaustion.
Exactly. We are looking at a scenario where the behavioral baseline of the general public has shifted so dramatically that even trained observers, sociologists, healthcare workers, customer service veterans, they are all finding themselves in diagnostic muddy waters trying to pinpoint exactly what went wrong.
Right, and the sheer ubiquity of that feeling is why we're pulling from such a fascinating account today for this deep dive. We're tracking the observations of a creator from a YouTube channel called A Homestead Journey.
Which is a really interesting lens to view this through.
It really is,
Yeah.
because this is someone who has documented with just alarming clarity how the American social contract is unraveling in real time. I mean, this isn't just an academic paper, right? This is a boots-on-the-ground look at the specific, everyday symptoms we're all experiencing.
Yeah, the stuff you feel but maybe can't quite articulate.
Exactly. We are looking at a breakdown that spans from 6-year-olds in elementary school all the way up to elderly shoppers.
Yeah.
We're going to move from minor customer service annoyances all the way down into these deep existential theories about collective trauma and the psychological aftermath of the last few years.
And what makes this homesteader's perspective so invaluable is that it acts as a cultural thermometer.
Right.
Because when you live a lifestyle geared towards self-sufficiency and intentional community, which is what homesteading is all about, the contrast between that environment and the general public square becomes incredibly stark.
Oh, for sure. You notice the chaos more when you don't live in it 24/7.
Exactly. They are putting words to that unspoken vibe shift that is so difficult to articulate. But, before we can even begin to diagnose the root causes of this societal shift, whether they're physiological, psychological, or something else entirely, we really have to examine the pathology of what is actually happening when people step out of their front doors.
Okay, let's unpack those symptoms then. Because the homesteader uses some incredibly vivid language to describe this palpable shift in public energy. I mean, they describe walking into a store and seeing unfiltered anger, bitterness, envy, and just a profound, chilling lack of empathy on the faces of complete strangers.
It's heavy.
It's so heavy. They make the point that everyday tasks, like a quick grocery run, commuting to work, standing in a pharmacy line, they now feel significantly heavier. It is an emotional weight. They specifically note that people look like they are, quote, fighting demons.
Fighting demons, yeah.
And worse, half the customers look like they brought their demons out in public to share with everyone else.
And that phrase, bringing your demons to share, it perfectly encapsulates the collapse of what sociologists call societal buffering.
Okay, wait, explain societal buffering for a second.
Sure. So if we look back at Irving Goffman's theories on social interaction, he talks about the front stage and the backstage of human behavior.
Like a theater production.
Exactly like a theater. Historically, the social contract dictated that no matter how chaotic your backstage was, so your personal life, your financial stress, if you woke up in a terrible mood, you put on a front stage persona when you entered the public square.
You fake it, basically.
You fake it. You buffer your internal negativity so it doesn't spill over onto your fellow citizens. But what this homesteader is observing is the total eradication of that buffer.
The curtain is just permanently open to the messy backstage.
Yes. People are now completely sloppy with their negativity. It is loud. You can literally see the hostility on their faces before they even reach the cash register. Basic public manners are no longer seen as a civic duty. They are treated as this exhausting optional chore.
Oh man, have you noticed this in your own life? because the homesteader gives a perfect microscopic example of this buffer collapsing.
Like a gas station door thing.
Yes, exactly. You hold the door open for somebody at a gas station. Like 10 years ago, you'd get a nod, a quick thanks, maybe even just some eye contact, right?
At the very least, a polite smile.
Right. But now they walk through that door like you owe them the labor of holding it, like it is their royal right to have the path cleared for them without so much as a glance in your direction.
Yeah.
It just feels like society is walking around as a raw nerve.
A raw nerve, exactly.
Like that protective emotional callus that keeps us functioning in dense populations has just been completely sanded off.
And this raw nerve, it doesn't just appear out of nowhere, you know?
Yeah.
It is deeply tethered to economic and cultural exhaustion. The creator points to a very specific, highly telling indicator from their own life.
Yeah, the real estate background.
Right. They mention having a background in real estate starting around the 2010 financial crisis. And they observed a pattern back then whenever people get truly desperate for money. Whenever there's a severe systemic economic squeeze, they start taking their survival stress out on strangers.
Because it's just in fight or flight mode.
Exactly. When you are operating in a severe scarcity mindset, your cognitive bandwidth for politeness literally shrinks. You just don't have the energy for it.
Because they are stretched so incredibly thin. I mean, the observation here is that people are currently running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up. They're constantly working, driving to side hustles, monetizing their hobbies, doing DoorDash on the weekends. And yet they are staying broke and staying miserable.
The hustle culture just devoured everything.
It really did. They aren't enjoying their downtime anymore. They aren't even talking about their hobbies in social settings. They're just grinding. But, I hear that and I have to push back a little and wonder, are we just falling into a nostalgia trap here?
How do you mean?
Like, is this homesteader, are we just looking backward through rose-colored glasses, pining for some perfectly polite, rosy society that never actually existed?
Oh.
Or is this heavy energy a tangibly new, measurable phenomenon tied to the unique economic desperation of right now, of the 2020s?
Well, it is a vital question to ask because, let's be honest, every single generation thinks the one that follows them is ruining society.
The kids these days are terrible.
Exactly. However, if we look at the specific mechanisms of this current shift, it argues for a tangibly new phenomenon. Yes, economic stress, recessions, poverty, those have always existed. But the modern manifestation of that stress is entirely different. We aren't just seeing the social contract bend under the weight of financial anxiety. We are watching it absolutely shatter.
Shuddering instead of bending.
Yeah. In previous eras of economic hardship, communities often banded together. Think of the neighborhood mutual aid during the Great Depression. People helped each other.
Soup kitchens, sharing resources, that kind of thing.
Right. Today, because of the hyper-individualistic nature of modern hustle culture, when you are consumed by the grind just to survive, everyone else in your environment stops being a fellow citizen experiencing the same struggle, and instead, they become an obstacle.
Oh, wow. An obstacle.
Yeah. Yes. The person in front of you in traffic, the cashier moving too slowly, the elderly woman taking up space in the produce aisle, they aren't recognized as human beings with internal lives anymore. They are literally processed by the stressed brain as impediments to your immediate survival.
And that transition, from seeing people as neighbors to seeing them as physical obstacles, that doesn't stay confined to the stress of the grocery aisle or the morning commute. It follows us into the places where we're supposed to actually relax. It is actively destroying the whole concept of the third space.
Precisely. And for those who might not know, the third space is a term coined by sociologist Ray Oldenburg.
Okay, lay it out for us.
He used it to describe the physical locations outside of the first space, which is the home, and the second space, which is the workplace. So these are the cafes, the public parks, the local diners, the bowling alleys.
The places you go to just be around people.
Exactly. They're the anchors of community life where people from diverse backgrounds interact in these low-stakes democratic ways. But the homesteader notes that these spaces are becoming hostile environments due to a staggering lack of spatial and acoustic awareness.
Acoustic awareness. That is the absolute perfect way to phrase it, because the examples they give are just infuriatingly relatable. Like, they talk about people having full volume, deeply personal speakerphone conversations while sitting in a restaurant.
Oh, it happens all the time now.
All the time, or someone just endlessly scrolling a TikTok feed in a quiet airport terminal or a doctor's waiting room with zero headphones. It is just a constant barrage of digital noise, and there is absolutely zero attempt to mitigate it or turn it down for the sake of the people sitting 2 feet away.
And what is particularly revealing is the reaction when these individuals are actually confronted about it.
Right, because the creator actually works in the service industry and talks about this.
Yes. They mention approaching these customers and politely asking them, to turn their devices down so others can enjoy their meals. And the response isn't typically defensive anger.
It's not.
No, it's shock. Most people apologize immediately, not because they were caught being intentionally malicious, but because they were genuinely, utterly unaware that other human beings existed in that shared space.
It's like multiplayer mode got turned off in the real world.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah, everyone is walking around convinced they are the main character in a single-player game. And if you're the protagonist and everyone else is just an NPC, a non-playable character, then who cares if your TikTok is at maximum volume? NPCs don't have feelings. NPCs don't need peace and quiet.
Exactly. And in a single-player game, you don't worry about the emotional state or the comfort of the background characters. They are just background. This represents a profound shift from a community-first mindset, where you're constantly subconsciously calculating your footprint in a shared environment, to a mindset of absolute digital solipsism.
Digital solipsism, where the self and the screen are the only recognized realities.
Right. When your attention is entirely hijacked by an algorithmic feed, your physical presence in the third space becomes a ghost. You are occupying physical territory, sure, but socially and mentally, you have completely vacated the premises.
And what is truly alarming here is that this single-player mindset isn't just ruining the vibe at the local coffee shop, It is infiltrating our private, vetted relationships. It's destroying the foundational concept of hospitality.
The dinner party story.
Yes, the dinner party story. The homesteader shares this deeply personal anecdote that I think just perfectly illustrates the death of this social mortar. They decided to host a dinner party for their friends.
And they did everything right.
They went all out.
They really did. They gave all their friends 2 weeks' notice. They spent days cleaning their home, preparing the food from scratch, just putting real, genuine effort into curating a welcoming space for people they care about.
And the result of that effort is just a masterclass in modern social decay. Every single person invited showed up 2 hours late. 2 hours. I mean, not fashionably late by 15 minutes. 2 whole hours.
2 hours late, and not only that, every single person arrived completely empty-handed.
Just blew my mind when I read that.
No bottle of wine, no side dish, no flowers, not even a bag of ice. The creator was stunned and rightfully felt deeply disrespected by it. They explained that they were raised with a very basic, traditional code of hospitality. If you are invited to a gathering as an adult, you bring something.
You just do.
You bring an offering to lighten the load of the host who is generously opening their home to you.
It is the basic principle of reciprocity.
Oh.
But, and I love this part, the homesteader exhibits this incredible moment of self-reflection here. They admit that for years they themselves were extremely selfish. They operated purely out of self-interest and actually lost friends in the past because of it.
Which takes a lot of maturity to admit.
It does. It took them years of hard, intentional work to unlearn that behavior, to learn how to put others first and approach the world with a hospitable mindset. So when they finally achieve this and then experience such blatant disregard from their own chosen circle of friends, they don't just see it as a one-off rude night.
No, they recognize the pattern.
Right. They identify it as a symptom of a much larger pervasive cultural disease, which is this modern mantra of, quote, I don't owe anyone anything.
Oh, that phrase, I don't owe anyone anything. It has become weaponized therapy speak.
Weaponized therapy speak. Tell me more about that.
Well, it began as a legitimate psychological tool, right? To help people set boundaries against abusive or highly toxic relationships, which is healthy. But the internet algorithm, which strips all nuance from complex psychological concepts, flattened it into a universal excuse for selfishness.
So it just became a get-out-of-jail-free card for being a bad friend.
Exactly. It morphed into, you don't owe anyone your time, you don't owe anyone an explanation, you don't owe anyone a favor.
And the homesteader vehemently rejects this internet philosophy. They argue the exact opposite. They say that if we want a functioning society, you actually do owe everybody everything.
Which is a bold claim today.
It is, but it makes sense. You owe people basic kindness. You owe your friends hospitality. If someone spends 2 days cooking for you, you owe them punctuality and at least a bottle of wine. You owe a stranger an acknowledgement when they hold the door. I just keep wondering, how did we get from standard reciprocal neighborliness to a place where adults think it's perfectly acceptable to show up 2 hours late and empty-handed to a dinner party?
We got here because we fundamentally forgot the anthropological function of the gift.
The gift. Okay, break that down.
If you look at the work of Marcel Mauss, he's a foundational anthropologist, he wrote extensively on the concept of the gift. He argued that the exchange of gifts, whether it's bringing a physical item to a party or the abstract gift of arriving on time to respect someone's schedule, it is never truly free.
There's always strings attached.
Not bad strings, but social strings. It comes with the obligation to give, to receive, and to reciprocate. These small acts of hospitality are not arbitrary, stuffy rules invented by some etiquette columnist in the 1950s. They are the vital social mechanisms that bind individuals into a community.
They're the glue.
They are the glue. They are signals that say, I value your effort, I recognize our interconnectedness, and I am willing to sacrifice my own resources, my time, my money, my convenience to maintain our bond.
And when you don't do that, you're signaling the opposite.
Exactly. When a culture begins to view all social obligations as oppressive, when we convince ourselves that setting boundaries means we never have to inconvenience ourselves for others, that intricate web of reciprocity dissolves. The structure collapses back into a collection of isolated, hyper-individualistic atoms.
And when that mortar dissolves in our private, curated lives, it's no wonder our public transactional spaces are completely collapsing. Because, I mean, think about it. If you aren't even extending basic courtesy to your actual friends, you certainly aren't extending it to a stranger wearing a name tag at a store.
Not a chance.
Which brings us to the most starkly visible manifestation of this breakdown. And this is the generational disconnect in customer service. The homesteader specifically zeroes in on their recent interactions with the 18 to 24-year-old demographic entering the workforce.
And the observations in these transactional spaces are incredibly jarring. The creator describes interacting with young adults who behave in ways that defy the basic scripts of commerce. They use phrases like, the workers seem like their brains are fried, or they act like it's their first day on Earth.
Yeah, the drive-through anecdote they share is borderline surreal. Like, it sounds like a comedy sketch, but it's real life.
Walk us through it.
Okay, so the creator pulls up to the drive-through window to pay. They hand the young employee their credit card and say, here you go.
Standard interaction.
Standard. But there's just silence. Not a word from the worker. The employee runs the card and hands it back. The creator says, thank you. Again, silence. The employee hands the bag of food through the window. The creator says, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
And let me guess, silence.
Complete, absolute dead silence. The employee never broke eye contact with the void. Not a single syllable was uttered by the worker during an exchange that, historically, had a very rigid, polite script to it. Hello, how are you? Have a nice day. Nothing.
And it isn't just an absence of pleasantries either. It's a fundamental breakdown in basic problem-solving communication. The homesteader shares another instance, this time at a Walmart.
Oh, the extension cord.
Yes. They approach a young employee to ask for a very common item, an extension cord. The employee looks at them with a completely blank stare and flatly says, I don't know what that is.
No attempt to look it up on their store device, no offer to call a manager, just a brick wall.
A total dead end?
And when the creator tries to clarify, maybe thinking they misheard, and they repeat, extension cord to plug things in, the employee just mechanically repeats, I don't know what that is.
So, sociologist Arlie Hochschild coined the term emotional labor back in the 1980s. She used it to describe how service workers are required to manage their own feelings to create a publicly observable facial and bodily display.
Meaning they have to smile even if they're miserable.
Essentially, yes. It's the requirement to smile and be polite to customers as part of the job description. What we are witnessing now is a mass, unauthorized strike against emotional labor.
A strike. That's a powerful way to frame it.
Well, the basic script, the hello, the how are you, the thank you, it served a crucial sociological purpose. It humanized a commercial exchange. It briefly elevated a financial transaction into a social interaction between two community members. When that script is abandoned, the warmth vanishes. The cashier and the customer are reduced to mere mechanical components in a transaction. They become friction points to one another.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I hear that, and I have to wonder, are we just being deeply unfair to 19-year-olds here?
In what way? Well, put yourself in their shoes. If I'm an 18-year-old making minimum wage, and I have just watched the general public turn into this raw nerve we talked about earlier, I mean, if every third person in my line looks like they are fighting demons and ready to scream at me over an expired coupon, wouldn't going completely emotionally blank be the only logical defense mechanism?
You make a very good point.
Right. If I offer a warm, "How are you today?" I am opening a door for a stressed out, economically desperate customer to just dump their trauma on me. So I don't open the door, I stay silent to survive the shift.
That is an incredibly empathetic and honestly likely accurate reading of the situation. If the public square has become a hostile environment, then the frontline retail workers are the infantry taking the brunt of that hostility.
Exactly, they're in the trenches.
And the silence, the robotic responses, the flat effect, it is a protective shell. It is the armor you wear when you expect to be attacked. However, the homesteader also points out that while trauma might explain the defensive posture, there is also a genuine structural deficit in socialization at play here. Meaning they just genuinely don't know how to talk to people.
Essentially, yeah. They note that 10 or 12 years ago, young workers still possessed a baseline moral code or a sense of communicative respect that just seems entirely absent now. They point out that cashiers will now actively roll their eyes when a customer thanks them.
Just rolling their eyes at a thank you.
Yes, seemingly entirely disconnected from the economic reality that the customer's purchase is literally what funds their paycheck. The creator, who values small talk as a way to show appreciation to service workers, notes that when they try to make a friendly side comment, these young workers look at them like they are clinically insane.
Which opens up a terrifying line of thought. I mean, really terrifying. If the 18 to 24-year-olds, who at least has some normal childhood before the world shifted in 2020, if they are struggling this profoundly to communicate and connect, what on earth is happening to the children?
It's a grim picture.
It really is.
Yeah.
What is the psychological fate of a child being actively raised in an environment where adults don't speak to each other, where third spaces are dead, and where public interaction is defined by tension and silence?
Well, the homesteader provides a chilling glimpse into that reality by sharing insights from a friend who is an English teacher.
Yes, the teacher's observations.
This educator, who obviously spends 40 hours a week observing children, noted 3 deeply disturbing trends that have aggressively escalated just in the current school year alone.
And the observations are staggering. Like trend number 1, 6-year-old boys, we're talking first graders here, routinely making highly specific, misogynistic, and racist comments.
At 6 years old.
6. Trend number 2, 12-year-old girls deeply entrenched in complex, multi-step, anti-aging skincare routines. And trend number 3, young, preteen girls completely abandoning their own developing identities to adopt the exact, highly curated personalities of adult women influencers they watch online.
All 3 of these trends point to the exact same sociological failure.
Which is?
The death of local, physical community socialization. Historically, a child's worldview was shaped by their immediate physical geography. They were socialized by interacting with their parents, their neighbors, the local shop owner, the kids on the playground.
Real people in the real world.
Yes, they learned how to behave by navigating the physical third spaces of their town. But as we established earlier, those spaces are dead or they're hostile. So where does the socialization happen now? It happens entirely on the internet.
Right. It is as if childhood is being bypassed entirely, like skipping the low-stakes tutorial of a complex video game and being dropped straight into the final hardest boss fight with absolutely no skills.
That's a brilliant analogy.
You have first graders who should be learning how to share crayons. Instead, they are parroting incredibly toxic, politically polarized internet rhetoric that they heard on a YouTube short. You have middle schoolers who haven't even finished puberty, terrified of getting wrinkles.
Because we are observing the rapid algorithmic acceleration of childhood, algorithms do not distinguish between adult anxieties and child development.
They just care about watch time.
Exactly. They reward extreme, polarized, and highly performative content because it drives engagement. So adult anxieties, whether that is hyperpolitical ideology targeting young boys, or the obsessive capitalistic pursuit of youth and beauty targeting young girls, those anxieties are trickling directly down to children who just do not possess the neurological development or the life experience to process them.
And when you bring in the mirror neurons of a developing brain, I mean, kids naturally learn by mimicking the older kids around them.
Yeah.
But if they aren't on a physical playground with older kids, they are mimicking parasocial influencers.
And that's a huge problem.
It's massive. They are
Right.
adopting these rigid performative personalities because that is what the screen models for them. But an influencer's persona is flat. It's a brand. It's not a real human. If children are building their entire core identities based on internet brands before they even figure out who they authentically are, how do they ever learn to genuinely connect with the messy, nuanced, uncurated human being sitting next to them in a classroom?
The scary answer is they don't. And that is the tragedy the teacher is observing. If your primary model for human interaction is a parasocial relationship through a screen, the complex, empathetic reality of face-to-face communication feels terrifyingly alien.
Because it doesn't have a script.
Right. It requires skills, reading body language, managing conflict, experiencing empathy that simply haven't been practiced. This suggests a future where the robotic, detached interactions we just discussed in the drive-thru don't remain a temporary defense mechanism. They become the permanent default mode of human connection.
Okay, we have to pause and look at the map here for a second. We've established the symptoms. The speakerphone offenders ignoring shared space, the friends who show up hours late empty-handed, the silent cashiers treating customers like obstacles, the children parroting influencers. People of all ages are acting in ways that defy the historical social contract. So we have to ask the ultimate question here. What caused this timeline to split?
When did it all go wrong?
Exactly. When did the tracks diverge? Because the Homesteader points to a very specific, undeniable moment in time.
Yes. The creator draws a hard, definitive line at the year 2020
2020.
and the global respiratory virus. While they acknowledge that societal decline is a spectrum, and things certainly began shifting with the advent of the smartphone in the late 2000s, they insist that 2020 broke something fundamental on a biological and societal level.
And they bring in some really interesting perspectives here.
They do. They bring in the perspectives of multiple nurses, healthcare workers who were and still are on the front lines dealing with the raw, unfiltered public to explore why people now act like, in their words, zombies or robots.
And these nurses present two distinct theories that I find absolutely fascinating because they approach the exact same symptom from completely different angles. The first theory is primarily psychological.
Let's hear it.
It posits that the general public essentially developed a mass, collective PTSD from the intense fear, the constant threat monitoring, and the profound isolation of that period.
And the psychological theory makes perfect sense when we look at neuroplasticity. The brain adapts to its environment. During the lockdowns, people were shut inside their homes, communicating only through screens. Socialization is not an innate, permanent state. It is a muscle.
It's a muscle that needs exercise.
Exactly. Empathy and social grace require constant daily friction to maintain.
It's like astronauts returning from a long stint in zero gravity.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Think about it. When they're up in space, they don't have to fight gravity, so their bones literally decalcify and their muscles atrophy. And they come back to Earth, and simply standing up is an agonizing, impossible task. During 2020, we were living in social zero gravity.
We really were.
We didn't have to deal with the minor inconveniences of the public square, someone cutting in line, a barista getting an order wrong, making small talk in an elevator. Our social bones decalcified.
That is an incredibly apt metaphor, because those minor inconveniences are the resistance training for empathy. When people finally re-entered society, they no longer had the emotional bone density to handle normal social gravity.
A minor disagreement wasn't just an annoyance anymore.
No, it was processed by their atrophied brains as a massive, overwhelming threat. Hence, the explosions of rage over a delayed flight or a missing side of ranch dressing. They lost the muscle memory of how to navigate friction without escalating to total combat.
But then the nurses offer a second theory, a physiological one. And this one is wild.
The oxygen theory.
Yes, they speculate that perhaps during the widespread illness, people literally did not get enough oxygen to their brains, causing microdamage that fundamentally and permanently altered their cognitive ability to communicate, reason, and behave normally.
Now, it is crucial to clarify here that this oxygen to the brain theory is entirely speculative within the context of this Homesteader's account.
Right, this isn't a medical journal.
Exactly. It is presented as an anecdotal observation by exhausted frontline workers, not a peer-reviewed neurological study. However, what is deeply profound here is not the medical precision of the claim, but the sheer desperation behind it.
Exactly. When I read that, My reaction was that it almost doesn't matter if the oxygen theory is medically accurate. The fact that professional, seasoned healthcare workers are grasping for literal physical brain damage explanations to understand why the public is acting so abysmally. It shows just how severe the behavioral shift is on the front lines.
It speaks volumes.
They're looking at their patients, looking at the people in the waiting rooms and thinking, you must have suffered literal brain damage to be acting this wildly devoid of empathy.
It serves as a desperate, powerful metaphor for the profound impact of collective trauma. Whether the cause is a physical neurological change from a virus or a deep psychological scar from years of isolated terror, the result in the physical world is identical. The threshold for social interaction has been permanently altered.
And it's visible.
Very visible. The homesteader emphasizes that you can visibly tell who has been most affected. The blank stares, the inability to hold eye contact, the robotic monosyllabic responses. It is the physical manifestation of a society in psychological retreat.
But the homesteader doesn't stop at psychology or physiology, and this is where the deep dive takes a turn into a completely different framework. They go beyond the trauma of 2020 and posit a much darker metaphysical explanation for this societal decay.
Yes, and as we explore this next section, we are looking at this strictly to understand the sense-making framework the source uses to navigate their reality. We aren't endorsing it, but it's vital to the source material.
Absolutely, it's just their perspective.
Because the homesteader moves out of the realm of sociology and directly into the realm of spiritual warfare.
Right. They argue that we are currently living in a fundamentally evil, wicked world right now. They use the phrasing that the veil is getting thinner, suggesting that the boundary between the physical world and spiritual darkness is deteriorating.
It's a very intense worldview.
It is. They observe that the general public no longer possesses any spiritual grounding or fear of God, and that this profound lack of inner peace is no longer just an internal struggle, it is visibly manifesting in their physical demeanors. Like you can look at a crowd and see that they are tormented.
And to explain this, the source references a specific biblical concept, the idea that in the last days, people's hearts will wax cold. The analogy of wax they use is a brilliant tool for visualizing emotional decay.
I found this analogy so striking because it explains the mechanism of empathy loss perfectly. They explain that when wax is hot, it is soft. It's malleable, it's workable, it can take an impression, right?
Like a wax seal on a letter.
Exactly. But when wax is removed from the heat, it gets cold and it hardens completely. It becomes rigid, brittle, and inflexible. The homesteader is arguing that we are watching society's collective heart harden like cold wax. The warmth, the softness, the ability to take an emotional impression from someone else's suffering is just freezing over.
And this hardened state leads directly to another complex concept the source introduces, which is the jealousy of peace.
The jealousy of peace.
Yes. They argue that if you are an individual who has managed to maintain your inner peace, if you walk through the world as a bright light, especially in mundane, everyday settings like a corporate 9-to-5 workplace, you will not just be ignored. You will face subtle, constant persecution.
This part was intense, but I mean, it rings true for anyone who has ever worked in a toxic office. The homesteader claims that people who possess hardened hearts, who thrive on drama, gossip, and chaos, will literally crave the peace that you project.
They want what you have.
But instead of asking how to achieve it, they will hate you for having it. Your peace highlights their chaos, so they will target you. They will find petty faults with your work. They will try to drag you into their drama. The source even goes so far as to mention demonic influences and witchcraft occurring specifically to siphon or steal that peace from those who have managed to hold on to it.
And if we step back and analyze this framework of spiritual warfare purely as a psychological tool, it serves a highly effective function for the individual.
How so?
Imagine you're working in an incredibly toxic environment where coworkers are inexplicably hostile, rude, and constantly trying to undermine you for no logical reason. Trying to rationalize that behavior through standard logic will drive you crazy.
You just spin your wheels forever.
Exactly. But by viewing that toxicity through the metaphysical lens of a hardened heart or a jealousy of peace, it gives you a coherent way to make sense of the irrationality.
Oh, I see. It completely shifts your defensive posture.
Yes, exactly.
If I view a coworker's unprovoked hostility not just as them having a bad day or even as them having a terrible personality, but as a deliberate metaphysical reaction to my inner peace because my light is exposing their darkness. It changes everything. It depersonalizes the attack.
Exactly. It allows you to depersonalize the abuse while simultaneously validating your own boundaries. It provides an energetic shield for your own empathy. You realize that their hostility is not a reflection of you doing something wrong or being inadequate. It is a direct result of you doing something right.
Wow.
It is a profound survival mechanism for navigating an environment that feels spiritually and emotionally barren.
Which brings us to the most practical, urgent part of this deep dive.
Yeah.
If the public square is filled with robotic cashiers, aggressive grocery shoppers treating you like an obstacle, friends who have abandoned hospitality, and spiritually hardened coworkers targeting your peace, how does a homesteader suggest we actually survive in this environment without losing our own minds?
What is the actionable solution?
Exactly. What do we do?
Well, the creator is refreshingly candid about their own struggles here. They admit they find it increasingly impossible to relate to the broader culture. They describe walking through a shopping mall and finding the surrounding culture, the noise, the attitudes, the hyperconsumerism, almost unrecognizable from the society they knew in the 80s and 90s.
And they make a really poignant observation that it is getting harder and harder to make new friends as an adult because of these deep, fundamental shifts in baseline values.
Right, because the foundation is gone.
Sure, you can stand in line and make small talk about the weather, but forming deep, meaningful connections is failing because the foundational beliefs about what it means to be a good person, a good neighbor, or a good citizen are just so vastly fragmented now.
Therefore, the homesteader's life and ultimate solution revolve around highly specific intentional values. They retreat into the core tenets of their lifestyle: preparedness, self-sufficiency, and frugality.
Which makes sense given their channel.
Exactly.
And their parting advice to the listener is profound, striking a really delicate balance. They say you don't have to completely isolate yourself. You don't have to move to a cabin in the woods and avoid the general public entirely. But you absolutely must become deeply intentional about seeking out like-minded people.
You have to curate your circle.
You have to build your own intentional community. And when you finally find those rare friendships with people who actually share your values, you must fiercely protect and nurture them. Because as they point out, in a world of instant algorithmic gratification, true trust is built slowly over time. It doesn't happen overnight.
From a sociological standpoint, what the homesteader is advocating for is a deliberate shift from relying on macro trust to building micro trust.
Macro trust versus micro trust. Explain the difference.
Macro trust is the belief that the general social contract holds. It's the assumption that you can trust institutions, strangers on the street, and the broader society to operate with a baseline of goodwill.
That people will just generally do the right thing.
Yes. And as we've discussed for the last hour, that macro trust has collapsed. Consequently, the only safe response is to retreat into a micro community. You build a highly vetted, deeply aligned circle of friends.
Your own little village.
Exactly. There is immense psychological safety found in shared values, especially values like preparedness and self-sufficiency during times of chaotic societal unraveling. When the outside world feels unpredictable, hostile, and fragile, having a micro-community provides the structural stability that society at large is currently failing to offer.
It's like building a social fortress. You pull up the drawbridge to keep the hostility, the digital noise, and the ambient tension out, but you carefully, selectively lower it for the few people who still speak your language.
The people who still get it.
The people who still understand that you bring a bottle of wine to a dinner party, who still say thank you to the cashier, who still believe in the warmth of the human experience.
It is a strategy of preservation. You are preserving the social contract in miniature, hoping that by keeping it alive in your own small circle, it doesn't vanish from the earth entirely.
So, to trace our steps back out of the rabbit hole today, we started in the tense, aggressive aisles of the modern grocery store, exploring the death of Irving Goffman's societal buffer. We looked at the destruction of Ray Oldenburg's third spaces through speakerphone solipsism and the weaponization of therapy speak against hospitality.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We examined the massive generational strike against emotional labor in customer service, the terrifying algorithmic acceleration of children who are skipping the playground entirely, the atrophied social muscles left in the wake of 2020's isolation, the deep metaphysical frameworks of hearts waxing cold, And finally, the intentional retreat into specialized, value-driven micro-communities,
And the toolkit you walk away with today is one of cognitive reframing.
which is so important.
Very important, because the next time you are out in public and you experience one of these bizarre robotic interactions, where you face unprovoked hostility from a stranger, you don't have to internalize it. You don't have to let it ruin your day.
You can just observe it.
Exactly. You now have psychological, generational, and even spiritual lenses to help you understand the mechanics of that moment. You can recognize that the interaction is likely not about you at all. It is a localized symptom of a massive, complex societal fracture.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as we wrap this up. A question that sits right at the edge of the homesteader's solution. We talked about how collective isolation and the loss of the physical public square back in 2020 is what originally decalcified our social muscles and caused this epidemic of hostility.
Right, the zero gravity effect.
Exactly. So, what happens to society if our primally logical cure for this current tension is to retreat even further into hyper-specific, insulated micro-communities? Does pulling up the drawbridge and focusing only on our like-minded fortress eventually guarantee that the world outside goes permanently dark? The next time you're standing in that grocery line, feeling that heavy, boiling tension in the air, ask yourself if you're holding the door open, or if you've already started pulling your drawbridge up.